Notre Dame going to host 9 official visitors this coming weekend, June 11th through 13th, the first weekend in which it is hosting 2022 players, recruits for official visits. It's going to be 2 more weekends and some midweek ones that we'll touch on, as those get closer. But 4 offensive players, 5 defensive players. Mike, I'm just going to hand this to you and take it where you want to take it, preview it how you want to preview it.
Yeah.
Tell the people what they need to know.
Shoot, man. This is so I've been saying June 18th is the biggest visitor weekend for Notre Dame, which is obviously next weekend. I think it's this one. June 18th has more guys, but I think this one is more important. Notre Dame, is placing these guys in their visit weekends strategically. And now sometimes it's, this kid has, Notre Dame would like to bring him in at X date, but he's already got to visit on that date, so they got to bring him another time. But, for like this weekend, I think this is like a huge one. Now, like, again, Xavier Nwankpa's visiting next weekend. Like Notre Dame, he's a top of the board guy. So I'm not saying that guys, and CJ Williams at the end of June. So I'm not saying that guys who are coming in later in the month aren't big targets, but like clearly this group of this 9 that they're bringing in June 11th, Patrick, all top of the board guys that they would just absolutely love to have. We're going to start on offense and then we'll dish for a second and then go back. And we'll talk about the defense. First, Billy Shrouth, a guy who we really have talked about for what, Patrick? Close to a year. Like I remember when did I put in that FutureCast pick? Let's see. July 30th, I put in a pick for him to land at Notre Dame. That's how long we've been talking about this young man. Like he got his offer from Notre Dame May of 2020. Just has been a huge target for the Fighting Irish. He visited Wisconsin last weekend. Told that visit went extremely well. He visits Notre Dame this weekend, then he's supposed to go to Ohio State next weekend. He's on commit watch though for Notre Dame. Here's the thing we've got to talk about with official visits. They're always important. I always say to follow the visits, right? These 2022 kids, if like a lot of them were not high profile recruits before the pandemic. Now Shrouth kind of was. He did visit Notre Dame before the pandemic, but a lot of these kids, this is their first taste of any in-person recruiting. So they're taking their visits, and even Shrouth, like this is his first time seeing these coaches and being wined and dined. Again, not actually drinking wine, but in so long. And when Billy Shrouth was a sophomore and was taking visits, it still was not the same. So the point here is these kids are just like over the moon, and the reactions are so strong to these official visits. So Billy Shrouth, when I almost cursed, went crazy about his Wisconsin visit. Like he absolutely loved it. Junior Tui Halamaka will talk about his Texas visit went incredible. Like these official visits are just so new. Like if that dead period had never happened, Junior Tui Halamaka would probably already had visited Texas and Notre Dame and sat down with the coaches and got that full unofficial visit treatment, which is still really big before you got the official. So does that first, before I dive into the rest of Shrouth, does that make sense, Patrick? Does that point make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost interesting and really interesting in particular when you look at Notre Dame that didn't bring anybody in on this past weekend for official visits, where Notre Dame especially, because again they didn't host anyone, but coaching staffs in general that are recruiting kids who took visits this past weekend, you're just kind of hoping like, all right, no one makes any crazy uh, decisions that throw their recruitment for a loop and decide to, all right, I had these 5 visits set up, but wow, this was so incredible. I hadn't been on a campus in years, or yeah, literally years, I guess, because it was more than 1 year. But I'm just going to decide to commit and do this, or I'm going to flip here and do this. And all of a sudden you're just, as a coaching staff, you're just kind of like, oh, what happened? Normally, again, no pandemic. That's probably not going to happen as often. So Notre Dame, I think you should be pretty happy that, all right, I had a number of guys that took uh, after or took visits this past weekend. None of them just randomly, surprisingly shut it down or anything. So in that sense, it's a win. I
Yeah,
mean, and not everybody else can say that. I mean, you have kids committed to Georgia that went to go visit A&M, and now they're not committed to Georgia anymore. And again, it's one visit, and then you've got this like new variable in your recruitment. Notre Dame's done pretty well so far as we're recording that no one has done that
yeah, yeah,
yet, and it's still going to host those guys because they haven't committed and shut it down.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's really important. Like someone will talk about next week as visiting Emil Wagner. He's considered Ohio State lean. He visited Ohio State this past weekend. He's still uncommitted. Like, yeah, that's big. So recruiting is always unpredictable. So when we come on here and say like, even Donovan Heinisch or Billy Shrouth or Junior Tui Halamaka, like all these guys are like really strong Notre Dame leans. You just don't know. And like it drives me crazy sometimes when people just assume that something in recruiting is going to happen. When talking to Notre Dame sources, I'm like, even Jalen Sneed, who visits, we'll do a video preview and podcast preview, and that one, he comes in the middle of the week. Like, he's considered a strong Notre Dame lean. He loved Oregon. Like, so I do think that these things are going to balance out. Like, all right, the visit high is real, but then they're going to kind of come off and be like, all right, I wanted X school all along. Like, this official visit thing's going to be a little bit more normal. And then I'm going to end up going probably where I wanted to go before the official visit season. I think that's going to be it for the most part. So transitioning back to Billy Shrouth, I think that's what it's going to be for him. The Notre Dame is after the big three Wisconsin linemen, the other two, Carson Hinsman, Joe Brunner, visit next weekend. It's really, and at least in my opinion, down to Notre Dame, Wisconsin, Ohio State for all three. Even though Hinsman doesn't have an Ohio State offer, I believe. But still, like it's those three schools, and Shrouth loves Notre Dame. I really believe that that's the school he wants to be at. His family loves Notre Dame, and I think that he could be on commitment watch, but it's certainly not done yet. And then moving to the next offensive lineman here, Las Vegas Bishop Gorman, 4-star tackle Jake Taylor. Who Rivals ranks as the number 38 tackle in the country. I can tell you that Notre Dame certainly doesn't think he's the 38 tackle in the country. Talk about another guy who took a visit last weekend. Taylor went to Alabama, told he had a really good time there. Then he's at Notre Dame this weekend, Oklahoma, June 18th. That's pretty much his final three schools. But, this 6'6", 290-pounder, Patrick, I mean, Jeff Quinn wants Jake Taylor bad, but it's a dogfight. He's going to take these three visits, and he's probably going to announce sometime late June or in July, maybe August, but definitely before the start of his senior season at Gorman in Vegas. This is a big one for Notre Dame. They need to hit this one out of the park. Jeff Quinn, again, badly wants him. Moving along, running back Dallin Hayden, from Memphis Christian Brothers. He's a guy who took a self-guided tour to Notre Dame in the spring, and he really liked it. He visited Illinois last week. His brother Chase plays there as a graduate transfer. He played at Arkansas with Brett Bielema, and now they're both at Illinois. I don't think that what is their nickname? Or is it the Orange? Is that what they are? What are they?
Illini. Yeah.
Fighting Illini. Syracuse Fighting Illini. His father played at Tennessee, but it's Notre Dame or Ohio State, in my opinion. He's got Notre Dame this weekend, Ohio State next weekend. Ohio State's considered the favorite. Don't count out Notre Dame, though. I think the Fighting Irish have a better shot than some people think. Tobias Merriweather, a huge receiver target for Notre Dame, one of the biggest for Del Alexander. Ranked as the number 156 overall player in the country, number 21 receiver, number 2 player in the state of Washington. I think this is a Notre Dame-Stanford battle, and I really think it has been for several months. it's a coin flip to me. My sources have a hard time reading Merriweather in terms of between those two schools. Obviously, the official visits will be a big thing. He's going to take trips to both. So Merriweather, if Notre Dame could get that 6'4", 180-pound four-star prospect, Fighting Irish staff would be extremely excited. So that's the offensive guys: Shrouth, Taylor, Hayden, Merriweather, all top of the board guys. If all four said after their visit, I want to commit, no doubt Notre Dame would take all four of them. No brainer take. So pretty big. Any thoughts on those four guys before we move on to defense, Patrick?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. Uh, I certainly think Merriweather, again, like all the other receivers, uh, taking on a little bit more of an importance of that's one you feel like you really want to win, need to win, whatever. In light of that class, all of a sudden having a lot more spotlight on it and uh, potentially getting bigger in numbers.
It's my favorite thing is when you ask someone a question and they say no, but then actually do give you an answer like you just did. Very well done, Patrick. The no, but I'll still talk. I'm just teasing you. All
No,
right,
I
move
don't
on.
like one word answers, so
Yeah,
I'm
that
gonna
would
give
have
you
been
something.
that would have been boring. All right, let's move on to some defensive guys. Benjamin Morrison. This picture right here for YouTube folks, that was him at Auburn. So he took an unofficial to Auburn this past week, and I want to say might have been at Alabama as well. I'm not 100% sure. Some people think it's Alabama and Washington for Morrison. That is not what I gather. It's much more from what I'm told. Notre Dame, Washington, Alabama would certainly be in there, but I don't think that they're pushing too hard for him right now. I think it's Notre Dame, Washington. To me, I think there's a good chance he pops after this weekend. If you're going to ask me who's the most likely, I might think that it's Morrison. He's scheduled to take an official visit to Washington June 18th, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't take that visit. Jaden Mickey's Notre Dame's first defensive back commit in this class. He's solid. He'll visit at the end of the month, but that was a huge domino to fall for Notre Dame. But between some of these other guys, there needs to be another domino that falls on the defensive backboard, and this is a big weekend for that. Jake Pope, who I went and saw on Tuesday, June 8th. You can find my video interview with him on our YouTube channel. It's on blueandgold.com as well. He's really excited about getting up to South Bend. He was at UNC last weekend, perceived a leader in his recruitment. I think Pope might mess around and end up on Notre Dame's commitment list. You're going to see a picture, I'm sure, of Jake Pope in front of Touchdown Jesus. The Pope and Jesus, how much better does it get? So I don't know. Jake Pope's recruitment, he's also going to be at Ohio State and Alabama this month for officials. He's also talking about midweek trips unofficially to an Auburn. He's trying to get up to Michigan. But I think for me, it's either going to be North Carolina or Notre Dame. Which school exactly, I truly couldn't tell you. And then another big defensive back target for Notre Dame, one that the Irish staff would just be extremely excited about if he wants in, is Devon Moore from Naples, Florida. A guy, if you follow my coverage closely, I went and saw in May. He was extremely impressive. Boundary corner all the way for how big he is and how well he moves. Shouldn't be possible. He's a legit 6'3", 180, 190 pounds. He was at Alabama for an unofficial. He really liked that place. He likes Florida. He took an unofficial there, but I think Notre Dame wants him the most, and I think right now I'm leaning Notre Dame. But look, Notre Dame with all of these guys. Let's see. All of these official visitors I'm talking about this weekend, I feel like Notre Dame's in the top two. Now, is that me being a homer? I really hope not. I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to be, but you got to close. You can't finish second for 9 guys. So, and all of these 9, I really do feel like if every single one of these guys after the visit said, I'm in, I want to commit right now. Can I post it on Twitter? I think all of them, Notre Dame would take all of them. So, got Benjamin Morrison, Jake Pope. Pope's the safety for Notre Dame. Moore is a boundary corner. In Morrison, I'm not 100% sure. He could play multiple positions. That's what I've heard. And then the big one, Noafe Tuihalamaka from Mission Hills, Bishop Alemany. For a long time, he was listed by Rivals as the nation's top inside linebacker. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the number one there still on his position. I'm pretty sure that's going to change. Rivals updated its national rankings, but I do not believe it has the positional rankings and state rankings have been updated yet. So he dropped from, I believe it was 71 in the country down to 144. Adam Gorney, we actually had on our YouTube video last week. He felt that that Nuafe Tuihalamaka didn't have a strong spring. So, he took a tumble, but, there's no doubt that, this is a big time prospect. It looks like Notre Dame or Texas. Tuihalamaka officially visited Texas, as I mentioned earlier. He's at Notre Dame this weekend, and then he's expected to announce next weekend. So I think that Notre Dame should win this one. Like I said, his Texas visit, he was on a high. Like, it was just an incredible visit. He absolutely loved it. But I think that things are going to correct itself. If he was blown away by Texas, he's probably going to go to Notre Dame and be blown away by what he sees in South Bend. And I'll say this, the Notre Dame coaching staff follow these kids on Twitter and Instagram. They see the posts and, Noave tweeting, "I'll be back. I love this place so much." They're reading the interviews, I'm sure. So they're probably like, all right, let's do this thing. I'm going to go win this recruitment now. So it's even like a little bit of added motivation, if not, going and recruiting for their jobs, right? Or maybe I'm crazy. Maybe Marcus Freeman's watching this and being like, "Mike, you're an idiot." But that's my take. But this is a big one. And I have a future cast pick in for Notre Dame to land Tuihalamaka. One that I put in February 15th. I think I put that one in before, all the major sites out there. And, certainly considered a Notre Dame lean heading into the month of June where things are at now. Texas might have pulled ahead, but I think Notre Dame was going to pull right back ahead. And then last, here's another big riser. I was hoping Devon Moore was going to be a big riser in the rankings, and Jake Pope. They're still 5.7s, 3 stars on Rivals. Shaking my head, but Lucas went from a 4-star to the number 100, 4-star outside the 250 nationally to 149 in the country. Big riser. I'm not 100% sure if he's official or unofficial, but he was at Texas A&M last weekend. He's got Notre Dame this weekend. A bunch of schools are still in play for Lucas. He's talked about taking this thing the distance. This is like a sneaky sneaky commit watch. Like, he's a candidate for me, just kind of reading the tea leaves and educated guess for me who's been in the recruiting industry for 8 years. Like, I could see this one happening for Notre Dame. Like, Notre Dame has felt really good here for several months. So when we talked about Heinisch, he's a really nice player and someone that, Notre Dame needs on its team. But Lucas is also someone who Notre Dame needs on its team because he's a freak. Like, Donovan Heinisch is dependable, reliable, tough, all those good things. But Lucas is, a monster and very well may be the most important recruit on Notre Dame's board.
Yeah, I put him as one of my 5 most important official visitors for June when we did that episode and video last month. And for a lot of the reasons that you said, where Notre Dame's defensive line or defensive tackle board sits, where, okay, it's very good they got Heinisch on board just so they've got somebody locked in there. But really, if you look at, all right, what happens if they don't land Anthony Lucas, you're looking at a bit of a decrease from what he is to whoever else they might pursue, or some of those other guys that have been offered or they're talking to, but lower on the board. So in terms of where that position sits and his skill level, I think he's absolutely top 5 most important. And yeah, I think you can make a case he's the most important one of this weekend.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that for sure. But the thing for me, because I don't think I put him in there, one, because I didn't want to talk about the same guys, and 2, if you do look on the Notre Dame, defensive line depth chart, if you will, unless Lucas plays the big end position, which is that new position that Myron Tagovailoa is going to be playing this season. I think there's a good chance that Lucas could play there. Otherwise, if he's a an interior guy, I mean, you look at how stocked that room is. Aiden Kayana, Gabriel Rubio, Jacob Lacey, like it's a loaded room. So that would be my counter. But yeah, Lucas could come in and be the number 2 guy there. So that's kind of my thought there. But yeah, he's a freak. Notre Dame would love to have him. So big official visitor weekend. Yeah, lock into blueandgold.com. That gold standard on Monday morning that I'll post will be loaded for sure.